Hello, class. My name is Treyvon Johnson, and I'm here to speak to you on the work interest topic on listening. Definition of listening. Effective communication is successful in all fields of life, whether in business or relationships. The direct exchange through communication can bring rewards or impairment on reputation. Listening is the ability to accurately receive and interpret messages in the communication process. Listening is the key to all effective communication. Without the ability to listen, the effective messages are easily misunderstood. When you're communicating in a business setting, social gatherings with family and friends, it is important that we have communication. It is very important to have business function or relationships to develop. And it is when we're using the workspace, whether we're using text message or emails or phone calls, or even when we're in outside of work off the clock, is using social media such as Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, TikTok. But you have to be careful in displaying messages or communicating to people because sometimes messages can be interpreted wrong. And it is, and we have to use our due diligence when we're pressing the send button, when we're sending things to people who are our family and friends and to the public because it can damage you in the future. It can impact you in the negative setting. And sometimes as it's in the digital world, there's no going back. According to the Harvard Business Review, when people talk, they want listeners to understand our ideas. The opposing party have the right to question the speaker verbally through their track record at the right time. Disturbing the orator while in dialogue defeats the purpose in trying to convey their views on the issue. Interjecting an orator while speaking is a disservice to the moderator and to the audience who are listening. The main idea is to address the subject to the audience. The audience have a right to approve or disapprove the speaker's views. Now, this is a personal pet peeve of mine, is, and I'm pretty sure it happens to everybody else as well in your personal life, is when the person's speaking and while you're in dialogue and when you're speaking, somebody just interrupts you when you're speaking. And sometimes it's very rude for somebody to interrupt somebody, even though they're thinking that, or you might be right or you might be wrong. But at the same time, it is important to respond when they're finished speaking. Sometimes people come from different backgrounds or have different views or different beliefs. Sometimes people can get very emotional if it affects them, or unless if it's physical, that's another topic. But people who have different political views about a person or your beliefs, it's it's important to be very civil. And what I mean by being civil is listening, or like I said, by taking notes, or taking it in and saying, okay, you might be right on this issue. I disagree with you because of this or that. Everybody has a right to approve of what you're saying or disapprove. I'll give you another example. As an African American, I love going to barber shops, not just because you're getting a haircut, but because you loving the conversation. You can be at many topics. It can be real issues, whether you're having uh, personal issues. Everybody just speak their mind on what's going on, or if it's a basketball player that you may like or dislike, or even with politics. But at the same time, it doesn't people don't have the right to be violent or just shout people out. Yeah, that may be shouting or debate, but it is important to be civil. It's important for allowing the person to speak. And then you address them saying, hey, you're wrong on this one, and then here's why. So it is important that we have to be civil when we're discussing things with people or letting the person finish. And that will be very effective in communication process. Different types of interruption, which can be well-intentioned, focus shifting, and counterproductive. Interruptions can form enthusiasm from the interrupter, whether it's supportive or not. However, interruption can deprive communication that can root from confusion and conflict. A well-intentioned interruption is a person that asks questions or supports your topic. A good definition of a well-intentioned interruption when someone supports your topic or they're like your cheerleader or they're excited for what you're about to bring to the table. And and here's one of the steps that you could, kindly approach them if you were interrupted. You would let the interrupter acknowledge your subject and continue with your presentation quickly. And you are to report to the interrupter focus shifting interruption. Some interrupters will interject your topic that you're presenting and shift your topic into a dissimilar topic. It is important that you control your presentation. It is important to be, again, assertive while presenting. Even though sometimes people want to drive you off of what you're speaking about, and sometimes when a person is speaking, they can just lose their focus. It is important to focus. And if you're have been interrupted and the person just interrupts your topic onto a different subject, the first thing you would do that you state that you're not finished with your subject or topic. You would like to address to the current topic that you're presenting and ask the interrupter if they are okay finishing your product before they ask a question. According to the Harvard Business Review, nobody can understand their points when interrupting the other person. Counterproductive. It is important to use counterproductive intermissions by setting expectations before the discussion or the presentation. By stating that you are not to take any questions after you have finished with the presentation. This will set boundaries on the listeners beforehand. Also, there are other ways to control the conversation is to hold your hands up, like the one right here. I was drawing. It's a high five symbol that will hold the expression. Address the interjected by stating politely or assertively, please let me finish the topic. Very few people interrupt your idea if you become more assertive. If people interrupt your ideas, it is important to remind them that you will have a question and answer session in the end of the presentation. It is imperative that dialogue requires order. Without order, there is confusion and there will be no resolution to the issue. Henry Martin Robert was an engineering officer of the United States Army and was invited to preside in a meeting in a church in his community. He wasn't experienced to moderate meetings, which resulted in pandemonium from opposing parties. He promised that he would not moderate or preside any meetings without order. Over the years, he has been in various parts of the country to examine parliamentary meetings. Now, this when it comes to order, that doesn't mean to tell your wife to shut up or things like that. I'm just let you know I'm not responsible. Don't tell your wife to shut up or anything like that. But if it's a huge meeting or a place where there's a huge bunch of audience, there has to be order. Uh, there has to be expectations in the meeting. And do you want to know who that person is who wrote this rule? Opposing parties had a set of ideas or principles, but in order to maintain a meeting without chaos, this same engineer that we talked about a few seconds ago established a method called the Robert Rules of Order. Since February 1876, Robert Rules of Order have been published all over the world used in community, business, parliamentary, and religious meetings. Robert Rules of Order have been revised over time, but it is still relevant towards conducting order and making sure that both parties have their voice. The purpose of Robert Rules of Order is to govern the conversation on the issue at hand. Here are the examples of the Robert Rules of Order: is to present a motion or theme, is to wait until the last speaker has finished, to speak in a clear and a concise manner, avoid personalities and stay on subject. If there are no more discussion, a vote is taken. The most important thing in the Robert Rules of Order is to be courteous. The benefits of listening. The orator who is speaking has an obligation, should be treated with fairness and respect. Show empathy and respect even if you have different values than the other person. Listening without being prejudiced. We must use tranquility by gathering questions. When an orator allows questions or feedback, next, think on what ways to respond directly without using emotions. The question is the topic, nothing else. The communication is getting your point across like a global positioning system, also known as a GPS. The purpose of a GPS is to get from where you are now towards a destination. The director, while speaking, to get to your destination, which involves strategy. The destination is to get your idea across to the hearts and minds of people through advising, persuading, or to entertain the audience. I would like to thank everybody for listening to my presentation. And I want to add this quote from Jimi Hendrix is that knowledge speaks, but wisdom listens. Thank you very much. You have a great time.